There's one episode of the Amazing World of Gumball that still lingers in fans' minds. Not because of monsters, ghosts, or classic jump scares, but because of something far stranger. Puppets. But these weren't the fun, silly puppets we grew up with. These were different. They felt wrong. Too real. Too quiet. Too human. And for a show celebrated for its absurd humor, wild animation styles, and fast-paced comedy, this episode was the last thing anyone saw coming. When the puppets first aired, the reaction from fans was immediate and mixed. Some were confused, others were outright creeped out. Many viewers felt something was deeply off, like the show had suddenly broken its own internal rules and crossed into something deeper, darker, and more psychological. It left people asking the same questions even years later. What was that episode about? Why did it feel so disturbing? And what were those puppets really trying to say? Well, today, we're finally answering those questions. Because hidden within that strange, silent episode is a message far more real and more important than most people ever realized. Welcome to the breakdown of Gumball's creepiest episode, and why it might also be one of the most brilliant pieces of storytelling the show has ever delivered. Let's be real, Gumball has never been afraid to take risks with style. One episode might look like a pixelated video game. Another might feel like a high-budget action movie trailer. But the puppets? That was something else entirely. It didn't just look different, it felt wrong. And that wrongness? It was entirely intentional. From the moment the episode begins, the atmosphere shifts. Darwin is lured into a dim, almost claustrophobic room by two unfamiliar characters, Terry and Larry. But they're not animated like the rest of the cast. They're actual puppets. Real, tangible puppets with stitched felt faces, oversized beady eyes, and slow, exaggerated movements. The lighting grows dimmer, the pacing slows, the music fades, and suddenly, the show no longer feels like Gumball. For the next several minutes, we're dropped into a surreal, quiet, and deeply unsettling world. And it's not just the visuals that change, it's the emotion. Darwin, who's usually the heart of the show, goofy, innocent, and full of life, becomes confused, isolated, and deeply uncomfortable, just like us. The audience is used to noise, chaos, and constant punchlines, but here, we're trapped with Darwin in this shadowy space, listening to voices that are calm, eerie, and manipulative. The puppets start offering Darwin a new identity, new clothes, a new sense of purpose. It's subtle, but it's disturbing, because deep down, it's not really the puppets doing the talking, it's pressure. The pressure to change who you are in order to fit in. The pressure to abandon your individuality in exchange for acceptance. And that kind of emotional manipulation, that hits home. We've all felt that before. And that's why this episode is so haunting. It's not just because the puppets are creepy. It's because the episode taps into something real, something universal, something human. So what was the puppets really about? Why did the creators swap out animation for real-world puppets? Why was Darwin the emotional anchor of the entire show, the character chosen to face this surreal test? And what message were the creators hoping we'd take away from all of it? In this video, we're diving deep. We'll break down the scene, decode the symbolism, and explore the real-life connections that inspired those felt-faced intruders. We'll look at how this episode wasn't just a creative flex, but a visual metaphor for identity, conformity, and control. And by the time we're done, you'll see why the puppets may actually be one of the smartest, boldest episodes Gumball ever made. Because behind those quiet, lifeless puppet eyes is a message every young person needs to hear. So stick with us. Let's solve the episode that scared us because it knew us. Let's walk through what actually happens in the episode. It starts like any other day in Elmore. Darwin is walking through school when he gets approached by two unfamiliar characters, strange, overly cheerful students named Terry and Larry. But something's off. They're not animated, they're puppets, and the moment they appear, the entire atmosphere shifts. They invite Darwin to hang out, but instead of going to lunch or playing games, they take him to a dark, empty room. It's quiet, too quiet. They start complimenting him, encouraging him to try new clothes, new hobbies, a new personality. On the surface, it seems innocent, but underneath, it's manipulation. They're not inviting Darwin to be himself. They're asking him to become one of them. They even offer him a puppet version of himself, a literal felt body replacement, and Darwin almost accepts it. He's confused, lonely, vulnerable. And when you're in that state, even the weirdest offer can start to look like salvation. But just when it seems he's lost, Gumball shows up. He bursts in, fights off the puppets, and rescues Darwin from being converted. At the end, Darwin escapes. He's safe. But the tone doesn't fully reset because the feeling lingers. And that's what makes the puppets stand out. The danger wasn't a monster. It was something far more real. Conformity, isolation, identity loss. All hidden behind cheerful voices and soft felt hands. So who were Terry and Larry? Why puppets? And why that specific look? Here's where things get really interesting. The puppets in Gumball weren't just random creations. They were designed and performed by an actual real-life duo, Devil Robots and Becky Sloan, part of the creative team behind the infamous YouTube series, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Yeah, that one. If you've ever seen that series, you already know it's not your average puppet show. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared uses bright, colorful puppets to explore terrifying themes. Consumerism, media manipulation, conformity, even death. It lures you in with childlike aesthetics, then shatters expectations with deep, dark commentary. And that's exactly what Gumball borrowed. Terry and Larry are inspired by that same formula. Smiling faces hiding disturbing truths. Their design, the lighting, the way they move, it's all intentional. They represent false comfort. They look safe, they sound happy, but their goal is control. And that reflects something real in our world. Sometimes, the most dangerous pressure doesn't come from obvious threats. It comes from friends, from culture, from smiling faces that say, "You're not enough as you are, but we can fix that." In that moment, Darwin isn't just facing puppets. He's facing every voice that's ever told someone to change who they are to fit in. And that makes this episode far more real than most fans realized. When the Gumball team created the puppets, they weren't just trying to scare kids. They were doing something far bolder. They were experimenting. Cartoon Network has always allowed Gumball to play with form. One episode might mimic anime, another might be filmed like a horror movie. But this one, it pushed the boundary even further. To make it work, the team brought in Becky Sloan and Joseph Pelling, the minds behind Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, to direct and design the puppet sequence. Yes, actual horror experimental artists worked on this episode. The voice performances? Slowed down, measured, with long, awkward pauses. The lighting? Dim, flat, and moody. Something totally opposite to Gumball's usual bright and colorful world. Even the script was different. Less jokes, less movement, more silence, more psychological discomfort. They weren't making a typical Gumball episode. They were making a warning. This was a story about how people, especially kids, can be manipulated into thinking they have to be someone else to be accepted. And using real puppets? That wasn't just for effect. It was a signal. This episode is different. Pay attention. It forced the audience to feel what Darwin felt. Trapped, alone, disoriented. Because sometimes the best way to tell the truth is to break the rules. And that's what this episode mastered. On the surface, the puppets looks like a weird detour, but underneath, it's layered with meaning. Let's start with the dark room. Darwin isn't just physically isolated, he's emotionally cut off. The quiet setting represents what it feels like to be trapped inside your own thoughts. Overthinking, doubting, second-guessing who you are. The puppet's offer of a new version of Darwin? That's not about style. It's a metaphor for losing identity. They literally give him a felt clone. Something soft, silent, controllable. That puppet Darwin doesn't speak. He doesn't resist. He just exists. It's conformity made physical. And their constant praise? It's love with strings attached. You're great, but only if you're like us. It mirrors the way toxic friend groups, social media trends, and even society at large can pressure you to clean up, fit in, or act right. Even the puppet's movements, slow, unnatural, overly synchronized, hint at the loss of individuality. And what saves Darwin? Connection. Gumball shows up and breaks the illusion. He brings noise back into the silence, color back into the gloom. He reminds Darwin who he is. That rescue isn't just plot, it's a message. When you're losing yourself, the people who really love you won't let you disappear. That's not just symbolism, that's truth. Some fans thought The Puppets was just a creepy filler episode. Others believed it was a secret horror tribute. And a few thought it was a warning about media control or brainwashing. But the truth? The creators weren't just trying to scare you, they were trying to reach you. The Puppets is about what it feels like to be young and lost. It's about how easy it is to give in, to hide, to let others decide who you should be. But Gumball reminds us, you don't need to change to be loved. You don't need to be perfect to belong. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stay yourself, even when it's hard. If this episode ever made you stop and think, drop a comment. The Puppets made me feel something. Hit like if you see the message behind the madness, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the wild, brilliant world of cartoons. Because sometimes the scariest stories, they're the ones that tell the truth.